Hey all, welcome back to Sim Race's Journey. In this video, part 2 of ACC versus Forza 7, we're going to finish up the comparison. In part 1, we looked at AI and the combination of aggression, which sort of determines your competitor on the track if you're not doing multiplayer. And we also looked at weather. We got real in depth with both those topics. In part 2, we're looking at pit stops, graphics, how the two games visually appeal or maybe don't appeal, and what we're calling gameplay, sort of the intangibles, the fun factor and the wow factor, if you will. At the end of part 2, we'll sum up our thoughts on the two titles. Our goal is to provide some information for someone who's just maybe considering sim racing or considering one of these two titles, wants a little bit more information on them, wants to know what's maybe a better entry point for them into this crazy sport, and we hope to provide that for you. We also know that Forza 7 is on life support. In just a couple of days from now, it's going to be delisted from the Xbox store, but it's still available through retailers, and it's still a great sim. We also know that Forza Motorsports, the successor to Forza 7, will be coming out sometime, probably 2022. And also in February of 2022 will be a significant upgrade to Assetto Corsa Competizione for the Xbox and the PlayStation 5. Significant update indeed. When those two titles are both out, we'll revisit this and do another comparison between the two and let y'all know what we think. We have links to everything below, all our streaming and videoing equipment, all our sim racing equipment, as well as part 1. And some other helpful links are down there. Anytime we put a link in down there, you can be sure it's a product that we believe in or a website we believe in and something that we trust. We wouldn't do it any other way. If you enjoy this and are getting some value out of it, please hit like and subscribe down below. Now, let's dig into this. So now we're going to look at pit stops in Forza and ACC. First, we're going to do Forza 7. Pit stops are something you can add into any race that you've got. They're called a quick stop, and you'll see how they happen as we go through this video. They're not nearly as detailed as the ACC ones. They're not as crucial to the sim or the game, or however you want to look at it, as the race as they are in ACC, but we'll get into that after we go through both of them, and then we can compare them side by side or verbally side by side. So to get it going, you go over to setup here, go to race setup, click over one to advanced rules, scroll down until you get to, went past it, quick stops. So we've got that set up as 1. Back out of here. Now we're going to go to race. So we're on the back straight here at Spa. It's important to know where the pit entrances are. Sometimes they can be a little bit tricky, and Spa is one of those tricky ones. It's basically right at the end of this last turn here. And now we're in the pits. Hands off. We got nothing to do. The software will carry you through to your pit. You can watch the track go by as we go from 19th, 20th, 21st. You can see the cars passing on the track, but you can also see a lot of cars are in the pits right now. We're now driving to the exit from the pits. This can be kind of a shock when you get to the exit, especially if you're not familiar with it. Now we're back in the track. But that's a pit stop in Forza 7. Pretty automated. There's not a whole lot you have to do in order to do it, except just remember to get in there at some point during the race. Now we'll go see what it's like in ACC. Okay, so we're set to do the pit stop here in ACC. Couple of things to notice. In this screen in the upper right corner over there is sort of a summary of the race weekend that we've got coming up. It has mandatory pit stops 1. There's a pit window. There'll be a tire change, and there's a mandatory driver swap. All these things will happen automatically. Actually, I want to go to setup real quick. Over here under setup and fuel strategy, top of the screen center where it says fuel and tire. It says 62 liters. That's the default load in this car. And a real quick way to estimate how much fuel you're going to need. If you look in that screen, it says 3.9 liters per lap estimated. Let's call it 4 to make the math easier and also to play on the conservative side. It's a 30-minute race. Figure if you drive like an alien, you're going to run 2-minute and 15-second laps. And again, I don't drive like an alien at all. But let's use 2:15 as a benchmark. So we've got a 30-minute race, and 2 minutes and 15 seconds or 2.25 minutes per lap. So we enter 30, the time of the race, divided by 2.25, the amount of minutes per lap. And it's 13.33 laps we're going to run. If we use 4 liters per lap, we're going to need about 53.3 liters of fuel to complete the race. Right up there at the top, if you hit the A button, fuel, that's where you can dial your fuel to where you want it. If it called for 53, let's go 55 because nobody likes to run out of gas at the end of a race. Okay, pit window's open now. So we're going to be going into the pits. Real good idea. This is a 5-minute pit window, which is 2 laps. So I have of the persuasion that you go in as soon as you can. Pulling into the pits, you cannot exceed 31 miles an hour. You can here, but then you need to slow down to 31 or less when you cross this line. And if you have the pit speed enabler on, it will automatically keep you at 31 or less. So you can see our pit coming up. It's the sort of glowing red thing down there. Pull in. Kill the engine. We're on the jacks. Controls are locked. We're with our teammate. You can see cars streaming into the pits. He's off the jacks and back on the track. Fun fact, you can drive through other cars while you're in the pits with no recourse. Be ready to start your car. B button on my wheel.
Mandatory stop is now clear. Let's go. We are at the halfway mark. Keep pushing.
And we're out of the pits. Pit limiter's off. And that was an ACC pit stop. And as you can see, a lot more in depth than a Forza 7 pit stop. There's so much more to it. And in longer races, there's a whole lot of pit strategy involved. When you factor weather in, we'll just sort of drive along a little bit and talk here for a bit. When you factor the weather in, you've got tire changes potentially. You're going to wear your tires out. You got to factor that into it. Refueling. There's just a lot to it, and I think it's just a really cool feature, but it also noticeably adds to the complexity of the sim versus Forza 7. And that is the segment on pit stops, Forza versus ACC, and now we'll move on to something else as I drive off the track talking. Told you I couldn't drive and talk at the same time. That's it. So now we're going to look at the on-track graphics of the two sims, Forza and ACC, Forza 7 and ACC. Give you a chance to see what it looks like. We're going to do a lap or two around Laguna Seca in both sims, starting with Forza 7, and just give you a chance to see how they compare, where the strengths and weaknesses lie, how they render things. You know, is there more of a wow factor or a cool factor to one sim or the other? How they handle things like rear view mirrors, which is important. A good rear view mirror is worth a lot, and some things like that. So let's get into it. You can see the reflection on the windshield there. That's pretty cool. The scenery is really nice looking. The cars are really well rendered. Coming up to the corkscrew. This people in the stand look pretty awesome. The scenery looks really good. The lettering in the bridge there looks really clear. Helicopter and the clouds look really good. The fence alongside the track is rendered pretty crisply. And remember, both Forza 7 and the ACC that we're using right now are designed for last gen consoles, Xbox One and So now we're going to take a look at ACC at Laguna Seca. We'll do a lap or so of racing so you can see how the other cars look, how they interact, what the visuals are like, the mirrors, things like that. And it'll give us a chance to compare that with Forza 7. Then when we're done here, we'll just do that side-by-side drive around to the track so we can get hopefully a good comparable side-by-side video. And they all have sort of this bizarre wiggle to them. I don't know if they're warming up their tires. I'm not sure. I mean, just sort of that wiggle shimmy kind of thing going on there. It looks kind of funky. Cars are pretty crisp looking though. Scenery looks cool. The sky isn't quite as vivid a blue as it is in Forza. And the skies out there are incredibly blue. Our son lived very close to Laguna for about a year and a half. And cars look pretty good. No side mirror if you notice.
Car on the left. Clear on the left. Car on the left. Clear on the left.
The hills that we're looking at there, the ATV tracks aren't quite as pronounced. The trees look a little bit more two-dimensional too. People in the stands look kind of cardboardy. view mirror is very pixelated unless the car is very close, and even then it's kind of pixelated. I'll let this guy catch up. Pixelated and finally clears up, but it's still useful. Fencing looks pretty good. The trees, the closer to the track, look better than the ones in the distance. The ones in the distance struck me as very two-dimensional. Two-dimensional people in the stand, they don't have near, and there's just not as much sort of interaction, if you will, with people in the stands. Wanted to give you just a sense of the rear view camera, which is usually blocked up with my mug in the videos. So I moved myself over to the bottom left of the screen, and you can see the rear view camera there, in addition to the rear view mirror.
Clear on the left. There's a slow car ahead. Well done, mate. This has been your personal best.
And that's that. Get a good chance to sort of check out the other cars and things like that. The scenery in the distance there looks pretty cool. Again, like I say, very two-dimensional looking fans. I mean, very two-dimensional. Well, let's just take a lap by ourselves at like a 40-mile-an-hour pace and see what it looks like from there. So now we're going to, I've booted everybody off the track. It's just me. I've rented the track for the day. And we're just going to drive around it in second gear, just kind of take a lazy roll around Laguna Seca, see how it looks. Forza 7 is on the left, ACC on the right. On the hill in Forza 7 on the right-hand side there, you can see some fans waving flags. That's a cool touch. The sky on Forza 7, again, it's on the left, looks more like a California sky with that bright blue and those puffy white clouds. Both of them have good scenery in the distance. They treat some of the things like the fencing alongside the track there. It looks a little bit different, but I suspect that's a time frame thing. You've got a helicopter flying over there on Forza 7. Coming around here, another turn. Both of them have very good graphics, there's no doubt about it. But the bridge looks a little bit sharper in Forza 7 than it does in ACC. Coming up into this turn, you look at the trees in the distance in ACC on the right-hand side, and they look very flat, very cut out to me. So do the fans, in fact. Fence looks good in both of them here. Again, I mean, ACC, the graphics are not quite as good, but they're still very good. Both those bridges look pretty good. The fence looks good in both of them here. Coming on around. Now, when you get closer to the trees here in ACC, they look more 3D. They look better as opposed to the ones in the distance. Forza has a lot more fans lining the track, which I think is a pretty cool touch. Somebody else waving a flag again there. It just gives it some life, some vibrancy. To watching the race or as you're streaming by. Admittedly, you don't drive 40 miles an hour around the track very often, but it's still just a cool touch. Okay, coming up the hill here, heading towards the corkscrew. Again, I'm struck by the how blue the sky is. We just went by, I think, some track workers waving flags there. The fence there in Forza is very crisp, for sure. A little bit better rendered, definitely, than it is in ACC. Coming up there, heading down the corkscrew. And coming in here, scenery looks pretty good. They look like they're looking at different things, though. I mean, I will say that. I'm not sure how that happened, but both very crisp and clear. I'm a little bit behind here on the Forza screen, but that's Both look good there. Actually, I'd give the nod to ACC in this, what it looks like there, a little bit brighter and lighter feeling. Coming up on the last turn, looks good. Again, I think ACC renders that a little better, I think, but you know, I realize that a lot of this is completely subjective. It's just up to what you see and how you like it. Cool touch with the helicopter there on Forza. Just more life, more vibrancy into the Forza graphics there. Like the tower on the right-hand side of the screen has more color to it and things like that. So now we're going to look at the gameplay aspects of these two sims. We're going to look at Forza 7 first, and by gameplay, it's the things that are maybe less sim-related, but just like the framework in which the sim exists outside of, I guess maybe outside of the obvious thing of multiplayer. It's the things you have to achieve or the goals you have to meet and things like that. Let's go over here to single player. There's the Forza Drivers' Cup. And this is sort of like the campaign part of Forza 7. When you first get the game, you're brand new, you have to achieve goals in each of these 6 places. And you have to achieve them sequentially. Seeker, then Breakout, then Evolution, then Domination, then Masters, and then Forza Drivers' Cup. And within those, you have to achieve certain things. And there's all kinds of different challenges. I mean, there's a Mazda Formula spec, or you can do Indy cars, or exotic GTs, and all the different ones, Seeker, Breakout, Evolution, etc., all have all kinds of different things in there. And some of these you get, they're not tokens. Basically, it's the currency to buy things. Some of the events award you those. Some of the events will award you cars, and there's all sorts of different things that you get that way. Driver's suits. So that's the Drivers' Cup portion of the game. Free play here is where I spent far and away the majority of my time when I was actively playing Forza 7. It's where you can set up the race the way you want it, more or less. You can pick your track. You can pick your cars. If you wanted to do Indy cars at Laguna Seca, set it up and away you go. You wanted to do 10 laps or 50 laps, it's up to you. So that's all through free play. Multiplayer, just what you think it is. It's your entry point into the online multiplayer. They have leagues. There's just all kinds of stuff like that. Forza Galleries, where if you record a race, all races actually are recorded. It's just a matter of whether you save the replay or not. That's where you would access those. Cars is one of the outstanding things about Forza 7. There's a lot of cars, 700 plus. And they go from an AMC Pacer to the Porsche 919 and Volkswagen minibus, microbus, you name it, it's here. And I'll just give you a sense of how many cars there are. Okay, we'll start up here and we'll scroll across. And like I say, it's a vast array. I mean, there's really cool stuff in here. Porsche 962, if you ever wanted to race in a Porsche 962, here's your chance. Mazda 787B. It's very cool. It's just really cool to have these options available. But I will say this about this part of the game. They're not, I don't know how accurately reproduced or simulated they are. My guess is when you've got 700 plus cars, you're guessing in a lot of cases. I'm sure there's research done and data pulled, but you're still guessing. And some of the ways I know that just for a fact that they're not as accurate as it could be. 1970 Boss 302. It has a 5-speed in Forza 7. They never came with a 5-speed. I had a 70 Boss 302. They only came with a manual transmission, and it was a 4-speed. That's it. The 66 Ford GT that won Le Mans, in Forza 7, it has a 6-speed. In real life, it had a 4-speed. So there's just little things like that that I think you should be aware of, but it's still fun. I mean, a Audi TT-RS does not drive anywhere like a Formula car, does not drive anywhere like the Cadillac limousine, which is an option for a vehicle in this. So it's very cool. It's a huge, huge thing that they've got. And that's one of the things that Forza is famous for. My garage, that's where I can go and see all of my cars. Down here to paint and customize. That's another really strong suit of Forza 7. You can create the liveries that you want and race with them online, in free play and offline. It's up to you. And you also can download liveries that other people have created. Say you want to pick a certain livery that was something that you remember from your past. You can go onto the downloads and scroll through them and see if, oh, that's the one. That's the Martini Porsche I was looking for right there. And I'll put that on my car. And it's yours. You got it. You're not allowed to alter them because other people created them. That makes sense. Auction house is exactly what it sounds like. Chance to go into an auction and buy a vehicle you don't have. And then finally, progress, rewards, options. Options is just your HUD, your controls, your sound, things like that. Your stats are in here. And that's where you can see just how much time you've spent playing Forza 7, if that's your gig. Your drivatar and achievements. And that's a sort of a quick overview of the gameplay aspect of Forza 7. I like a lot of it. I like the aspect of the campaign sort of thing, you know, the Forza Drivers' Cup. That's kind of fun because it puts you in a whole bunch of different kinds of situations in different vehicles. I like the number of cars. I think they're visually very faithfully rendered. But as a sim, this is where I think a lot of the simcade aspect comes from, along with the physics and a lot of other things like that. But that's Forza 7's gameplay. And next we'll take a look at ACC's gameplay features. So we looked at the gameplay features of Forza 7. Now we're going to take a look at the gameplay features of ACC. Compare and contrast them. They're quite a bit different in a lot of ways. ACC takes a more focused approach to it than Forza does. Forza has all these different things. There's gymkhanas, there's all kinds of stuff like that. But Forza's or ACC's sort of a disciplined approach to it. They've got a championship, a career, special events, multiplayer, and single player. And we've kind of, in the other videos, like in part 1, we also sort of went through setting up races and things like that. But I spend most of my time in single player right now, which gives you control over it. But to go to championship, you can resume a season, start a new season, and it basically, you set it up here. You pick your series up there at the top, 2018, 2019, 2020. I mean, you've got choices. Season type, custom, sprint, endurance, all. Weather. A lot of the options that we have in a lot of the other parts of the game are in the single player part of the game are available here. And then you work your way through a championship season and see how you finish. Career, a little bit different. Not as many options to see or to choose, but still a more disciplined approach than Forza 7's here. You're going to race in GT3 or GT4. You're going to race on a specific number of tracks or a set choice of tracks. And you're going to be going for a career aspect or a championship aspect. So it's got a much tighter viewpoint of what it's looking at in the racing world as opposed to Forza 7. So there are differences. Like I say, the Forza championship is fun. But ACC brings you up closer to a real experience of racing. So in summary, there's no winner or loser. Like I say, when we first started out to do this, had a sort of like in our heads what we were going to do. It was going to be a versus kind of thing, and we realized that it's going to be just a comparison because they come at it so differently. So like I said, there's no winner or loser. ACC, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is very focused. It's all business. It's all racing. Forza 7 has a much more fun game-like approach to it with the Drivers' Cup and things like that. Some of ACC's features that make it an outstanding sim also bring complexity in. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to just have it a little bit more simpler. Forza leans that way definitely. But some people, myself included, I like the complexity. I like the setups. I like all that kind of stuff. Forza 7 has a lot more tracks. It has 32 with over 120 variations of those 32 tracks. ACC has 19 tracks. One other thing though that ACC has on its tracks, they're laser scanned. So they're super accurate, super faithful to the actual track itself. Both offer assists. ACCs are very limited. Forza's are much more extensive. They include things like braking assist. They include things like steering assist, which is maybe a help to get going. But again, if you're looking for accurate sim, you're not interested in that. But you also are going to be not interested in some of the assists in ACC. But they do both have assists. ACC has a very detailed and complex setup system. Just the sheer number of things that you can adjust in the car is amazing and very complex. And it's a real learning process to get it done right. So bottom line, ACC feels way more like a race car. It's been a long time since I've driven race cars, like a really long time. What ACC feels like is much closer to what driving a race car at speed feels like than Forza. Forza is a lot of fun, but it just doesn't have the feedback. It doesn't have the reality. It just doesn't. I guess one way I can sort of sum it up is when I race in ACC, by the time I'm done, I'm sweating. I mean, and it's not because of a physical exertion. It's just, it brings the reality and the tension into it in a really, really solid way. Forza 7 just has a lot more fun features to it, if you will. It's more of an auto racing adventure. Like I said, there's no winner or loser here. It's just a matter of what appeals to you. Hardcore sim, which ACC offers much more of, or just a fun sim with a lot of variety and things like that. So that pretty much wraps it up. We really enjoyed doing this two-parter. Hope you got some real good value out of it. Below we have links to all the equipment we use to video, to all our sim racing equipment. We've got a link to a spreadsheet, a Google sheet we put together that does sort of a side-by-side comparison of ACC and Forza 7, and some other links that are helpful and have information about ACC and Forza 7. We know Forza 7's been delisted as of this time. Yesterday was its last day. But it's still available as a physical product. So you can still buy it. You can probably get a pretty good deal on it. When the new Forza Motorsports, the successor to Forza 7, is released, sometime hopefully in early 22, and ACC's console update, which drops on February 24th, 2022. When those are both out, we'll do another side-by-side and see how those two products stack up against each other. And like I say, anything we have links below is a product we believe in, we endorse, and we're never going to put a link to anything that we don't trust and believe in. Yeah, it's a promise from us to you. So if you got some value out of this, please like it and subscribe down below, and we'll see you next time on Sim Racer's Journey.